From past experience, the board must maintain the public trust and has a duty to show that our decisions are always founded in what is in the best interest of our students and their education. A very strong theme from the public comment is that the public needs more time to process and wants to be part of the process of coming to a long-term solution. In fact, we are receiving a few more emails in recent days from parents who are quietly supporting this proposal. Many of them were initially opposed, but after they spoke with us in one of our QA sessions, have come to understand the benefits of the proposed agreement. This indicates to me that with time, more information, and lots of community conversation, we can achieve a long-term agreement with community support, whatever that long-term agreement is. I believe we need to allow additional time to build a community understanding of the options considered and why the mediation team felt this was the best solution to benefit all students. Mediation is not transparent by design because it is a method used for two adversarial parties like ours to come together to the table to formulate an agreement. It was successful in achieving a proposed framework for a 10-year agreement, which is unprecedented, but the second step in the plan was to ensure the proposal was vetted publicly, just like you read in my email. We asked the community to come up with ideas, and they've asked us what other options we consider. I think we need to share this information and go through the same process of weighing those options, new and old. I still believe with all the information, we will possibly come to the same conclusion, but this way we're all working with the same set of data. It is clear to me that the public needs more time to understand the 10-year agreement, and it is our duty to be open and transparent for them. It is our duty to engage the community in major policy decision. Transparency and engagement is essential to maintaining a healthy, holistic community. While I know the mediation teams worked hard to bring forth the proposal, we owe it to the community to give them all the information we can to help them understand and get behind a proposed agreement. I am not rejecting the proposal, but absolutely feel our board and our community needs more time to get acceptance of it together. I envision that a public engagement process would involve board representation from LASD and BCS, include representation from each LASD school, BCS, and representation from empty nesters, young and old, mirror the demographics of our district and the neighborhoods the district serves. And I would envision this process would start in the fall of 2019 and end by January 2020. And with preparation really starting as soon as we can. That being said, I propose that in lieu of approving the 10-year agreement, we direct staff to put together an interim agreement for 1 to 3 years. This is something we can talk about. Identical to what is in the long-term agreement, but only includes the interim portions of the agreement and all the legal mumbo jumbo. This will allow time for community engagement, input without lawsuits, and the annual Prop 39 process. As you know, BCS unanimously approved the interim, well, they unanimously approved the 10-year agreement, but in that, they approved the interim plan through their vote on Tuesday night. They should be also in favor of a standalone interim agreement along the same lines. This involves a community engagement process with a definitive timeline so that we can move forward as quickly as humanly possible, but with community engagement. Furthermore, any long-term solution must benefit not only all of our community students, but the community as a whole. It is the board's duty to ensure the future success of the district for all its residents. A strong public school district benefits every single resident, whether or not they send their children to BCS school and whether or not they have school. Unilateral and uncontrolled growth by the charter will not create the environment for a community-approved solution, nor will it protect the public benefit of strong local schools. Any agreement, short or long term, must include a cap. I do believe that we could build an amazing junior high at the 10th site. We get opportunity to build a school of the future designed around an amazing educational program we can envision together as a community, for our community. We can overcome some of the challenges the community has identified through a thoughtful visioning process, collaboration with the cities, and possible partnerships with the nearby corporations. So that is my comments. Steve, why don't we hear from you next?
I have no objection to anything you just said. It makes perfect sense in a lot of ways. My only concern is, this is really as good as it gets, guys. It really is. My only concern is that by opening the door, we're opening the door to growth again. So if we can achieve what you just mentioned without incurring any additional growth or threat of growth from the charter, then I have no issue with that.
The idea is in the proposed agreement that would be the case.
I understand that.
Yeah.
That it takes two sides to cooperate in a negotiation.
I do know
and as
that,
we all experience,
personally.
that has not been the case to date.
Yes. Brian.
Okay. Thank you again to everybody who came tonight. I especially appreciate those of you who did not use your full 2 minutes, but I appreciated hearing from everybody. And I fully hear the people who are a little disappointed that there wasn't more data here tonight. I mean, I think in general, there's no such thing as too much transparency, but I think I've learned that 2 public meetings a day is probably not wise in terms of both just endurance and in terms of actually being able to respond to the things that we heard. So that's on us a little bit. I want to just respond to a few of the comments. In no sort of particular, and this is sort of in the order in which people offered comments. The proposals to sort of split BCS across 3, 4, 5, that number of sites, I think there's a lot of operational concerns that I've heard from sort of principals that I've asked, what do you think about this? I mean, trying to coordinate the education of 500 children is tough enough when everybody's on the same team. It's almost unthinkable if you're actually trying to coordinate with some other group of a few dozen teachers and hundreds of kids who might need the same spaces when it's raining and those kinds of things. I also think that doing that before we solve some of the demographic and accountability issues with the charter school just invites segregation, frankly, on our campuses. If they're not educating, certain kinds of kids, then you end up with a situation where one campus has 2 different schools educating 2 different kinds of kids, and it's less about choice and more about perception, and I think that would just be a bad dynamic. I just want to say the comment that BCS is too happy for this possibly to be a good agreement, and I want to say I don't think that every agreement has to be zero-sum. I understand there are aspects of this here, but I don't think that's how we should measure it. On the flip side, though, there was a comment about, well, of course BCS is not accountable, and I don't think they should get a pass about that, right? The whole theory about the creation of charter schools is that those charter organizations would help increase educational outcomes for all students in the public school system. So to the extent that those board members don't think that's part of their responsibility, I think they're wrong, and I think they should be called on that. And obviously we hear the demographic concerns about BCS's enrollment. It's something that's been on our minds for a long time. Our hands are, to a certain extent, tied on that just because we don't have control and the county hasn't exercised it. But I will say that it was our intention with this agreement to, at a minimum, ensure that the preference for the old Bullis Purisima attendance area was gone. It's been brought to my attention that there are some, what I consider to be drafting problems that may make that not be the case as currently written. So there, at a minimum, I think there's some revisions that are going to need to be made there. One of the intentions of this schedule was that we would take public input and then there might be a little short cycle with BCS to sort of, if things came up that were, just changes that didn't change the intent of the agreement, but the wording, we would have time to make those revisions so that at least both boards would be considering the same text. Since they went ahead and voted already, then obviously we're going to have to do that in a more extended thing, and they're probably going to have to vote again anyway. So maybe that just plays into the points that everybody else has made about taking more time. There's a question about why we're afraid of competition, and I don't think we are afraid of competition. As a couple people pointed out, I think we're doing just as well, if not better in some ways, than BCS. The point that we make is that charter schools, again, are supposed to be about educational outcomes, not choice for choice's sake, right? And so giving parents, the parents of pre-K, the choice based on the way two different educational organizations market themselves, I think, is not something that was ever intended to be the dynamic. It was supposed to be about two different organizations both working hard to educate all different kinds of children in such a way that everybody benefits. Finally, the comments about the damage to the brand, that's a major concern to me. We are, as we always say, a community-funded district. We need the community's support. Mr. Roberts, I thought, was quite eloquent when talking about the way that decisions like this need to be 5-0 on the board to really express legitimacy, and I think I'm being persuaded that we need a sort of similar supermajority of support in the community as well. As Jessica said, the community is not as universally opposed to this as I think it appears in these meetings, because it's fervent opposition and lukewarm support. But that said, I don't think that even getting to 51% of the community, I don't think would be a good idea. I think we need the time to do the work and really ideally come up with something that everybody can support, whether that's an actual agreement or a path forward or what it is. Similar to Jessica, we've heard a lot of good ideas. I haven't heard one yet that's less terrible than this one, but I think that conversation needs to continue. At a minimum, I do still kind of think that this is the best framework, that getting BCS on a single site with a specific permanent enrollment level is the way that we can go about maximizing everybody's educational outcomes. But obviously the community deserves more time to absorb and respond to this. As a couple of people said, I think there are some voices missing from this conversation as we've heard it so far. We haven't heard very much from the substantial portion of the district that lives north of El Camino that would be most directly affected by some of these changes. We're not yet having one conversation. A lot of the discussions about various alternatives have happened in small groups and one-on-one, often without the people that would then be most directly affected by those other possible alternatives. So I think we need to try to get everybody on one page, if not in one room. I do think that the agreement as written gives us a lot of latitude to continue to explore issues and then decide down the road that it would be infeasible, but I think it's clear that it would be in the interest of everybody to do that exploration before we vote one way or the other, rather than after. So I think that's another reason to extend the process. I'm sensitive to concerns I've heard more in email than in this room about continuing uncertainty, and we can't kick the can down the road indefinitely, I don't think. So I think we have to come up with something. So I agree that it would be good to come up with a process. I don't know if we can do that by Monday, but maybe by our next scheduled board meeting after Monday is May 13th. What's that? So, at least given where we are in the school year and the fact that everybody goes out of town, we probably can't make much progress on this community conversation in this school year, but I think it would be good to at least try to define the process and give a little bit of time for the community to sort of react to that definition before it's June and everybody's gone until they come back in August. Personally, if we do go down that road, I would like to see us be a little bit more aggressive about the time frame. I think January, you either get it done by Thanksgiving or you sort of stretch way past the holidays. So, but that's a conversation that we can have in future meetings. As a lot of people said, there are a lot of really smart people in this community. So I think I would encourage staff to think about either hiring a consultant, or maybe we can find a parent who's a consultant who would be willing to help at a discount to define a process. There's a lot of knowledge out there about the ways to make this kind of community decision happen. And so, I hope that we'll fully explore those alternatives as opposed to, I mean, not that I'm inherently against a committee, but I want to make sure that we do whatever will be effective rather than just be back in the same place in a few months. I agree that in the interim, I think year one, when we're looking at what we have to do for 2019, because we still have this obligation to somehow house 200 additional students at BCS for 2019, I think what is in the first couple years of the proposed long-term agreement is better for both of us than what we had proposed in our preliminary Prop 39 agreement. And I haven't really heard any issues tonight or on email objecting to the short-term content of the 10-year agreement. So, and BCS, as Jessica said, has already approved it, so clearly they find that workable as well. So I think we should move ahead with that in whatever way works. And then just in terms of expectation setting, when I'm thinking about this, I kind of see 4 possible outcomes of this extended process. Personally, I think we'll either convince the community that this, maybe with some very minor adjustments, is the best thing. I don't think that's impossible. We might come up with something that is similar to this framework, but perhaps different in the reconfiguration of LASD. So there are proposals to either give BCS similar facilities to what we were talking about at Egan, but somewhere else, whether that's Covington or Blach, or those are really the alternatives given their size, or whether that's accommodating Egan somewhere else. There are proposals of moving that somewhere other than the 10th site. So I think that family of solutions is another possibility. I think it's not impossible that as we work through this process, particularly if BCS participates, we might be able to find something different than this, but that we can mutually come together with. And then there's the possibility that we'll end up at no, because we just can't make it work. So I don't see coming out of this process, so what's not included in there is what I don't see coming out of this process is a substantial white sheet renegotiation of the whole thing. I think, as Jessica said, kind of this is the framework that we got to in mediation. We can probably get to variations off of this, or we can get to a rejection of this and then start over.
I think your 10 minutes are up. No, sorry.
Apparently I've been talking too long. But I don't think I have.
Sorry.
I think that's all I have.
Okay, sorry. Vladimir.
Thank you all for your comments. I basically agree with practically everything that everybody said. I don't think we should sign this agreement as presented. I do have some, and I think that the thing that we should do is go out and make sure that we have real, honest, informed, rational community input, and we coalesce around a particular solution. I'm disturbed by comments that this is the least bad solution because I think that there are some solutions out there, or some options out there. I don't want to call them solutions. There are some options out there that I think are quite a bit better than the proposed agreement. And I personally, I don't think this is the time for me to go through all my objections to the proposed agreement, or even a variation of the proposed agreement. And I think that that will come out when we have a community discussion on it. I don't think the answer for community discussion is a committee. I think there are digital tools out there that will allow us to make full-throated, informed decisions. And I would like to involve not just 10 or 15 or 20 members of the community, but several hundred or even more than that. I don't think that we can make this very important decision without really solid community support. And I don't see that happening with yet another committee. So I also think that we should ask staff to go ahead and prepare a proposal in some form of Prop 39, some form of the short-term agreement. It's, as long as we delay it, that's the main point. I feel that this is our land, not BCS's land, and I think we should make the decision. In particular, I don't think that we should ask the BCS leadership to participate in this discussion. I want to hear from BCS parents, but I don't want to hear from an organization that has spent the last 15 years distancing themselves for LASD and then to tell us how we can use our land.
You know you're only encouraging him.
Jeff, could you go back to slide 9? I guess in the earlier, technology exceeds his capabilities. Airplay. All right. Well, let me just go. Never mind. Forget it. I'll just tell you. One of the frequently heard concerns, that slide there, one of them was the fourth bullet down there, which was mediation didn't allow for public input. I fundamentally disagree with that. I think that we don't need your input. We need your ideas. We need your participation. We need more than just input. We need you to agree to a solution. And so I think that particular bullet misses the point of what we're going through here. I'd also like to echo, she's still here, echo Pepe's comments at many different meetings. This is not only about LASD and BCS. This is about a much larger issue, and it has to do with public education. There's a war out there against public education. It's being fought in this little tiny skirmish in a very rich town that, you know, in some sense doesn't matter. What does matter is, are we behind public education? And if you are behind public education, then you have to be part of the defense of public education. And I encourage everybody to go to Pepe's house. I can give you the address. And participate in a full-throated effort to make sure that we retain the public education that we want and that we would like to have for our kids and for their kids and their kids after that. And I'd like to leave you with a quote. Never give in. Never, 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 never. In nothing great or small, large or petty. Never give in except to convictions of honor and good sense. Never yield to force. Never yield to the apparently overwhelming might of the enemy. And that's Winston Churchill.
All right, Shally.
Thank you. I'm going to keep my comments relatively short because I think children are falling asleep. And I want to respect all of your time. So thank you so much for coming out tonight and staying till the bitter end. It just shows your passion and love for our school district. So I am obviously, given my background, in favor of an inclusive public process. You asked us to slow the process down, and we heard you. And I wanted to make a few points clear. For me, this slowing the process down and taking some time to get public input, for me, this is not about BCS. For me, this is about connecting with our community. LASD families, BCS families, and families that don't have school-age children. And I'll tell you why. Because I campaigned on my belief that schools are the focal points of our community. And I think to exclude all of you from that process would be disrespectful and to you, and it would be unfair. I can already anticipate the negative emails I'm going to get. People are going to tell me that we are wasting a year. So I want to say, we are not wasting a year because if we go through this process together, and if we arrive at the same point that we're at tonight with this proposal, then fine, at least we got there together. So that's... I also want to make very clear, because I'm anticipating the negative emails, we are not delaying a yes vote, and we are not delaying a no vote. I don't want you to think that this is some sort of sham public process. I don't want you to think that a year from now we're just going to vote the way we were going to vote on April 29th. And that's how important your input is to us. The other reason I like the public process is, I think I mentioned this in my earlier comments, but this process would give us an opportunity to hear from voices that didn't feel comfortable voicing an opinion that the rest of their community did not agree with. Okay? I heard this from BCS families that love their small schools, that don't want to be on a mega campus. I also heard this from LASD families who were in favor of the proposal. And both told me that they didn't feel like they could voice their opinion. So I think this public process will allow all of us to participate. And I really want to build a community. I don't like an us versus them mentality. I don't. I can't even tell you how much I don't like it. So that's why in all my comments, I'm really emphasizing I want the BCS families to work with us. I want to collaborate as one community. Oh, thank you. Let me see. So everything you said during your comments, the public comments, we can address that if we do an inclusive public process. You wanted to address the length of the deal. You can bring that up during this process. You wanted to address governance and all students being served. All means all, you know. You wanted a unified system where BCS and LASD work together, because I like that, because that is the spirit of building community. You wanted to protect the long-term viability and stability of our school district, and I think we can do that this way also. And most importantly, or just as importantly, you wanted fair and equitable impacts and compromises on both sides. And I truly feel that this is the way to do it. So as we go through this public process, please stay engaged. As crazy as these last 3 weeks were, I really loved meeting like everyone that I met with, you know, and it's one of the best things about this job is being able to connect with our parents. So please stay engaged. Please have your kids stay engaged. Oh, I mean your friends, but your kids too.
Kids too.
Kids too. I heard a lovely young man talk yesterday at the Gardner-Bullis meeting, and I was so proud of him for speaking. Former Gardner-Bullis student, currently at Egan, very eloquent, and actually it took a lot of guts to speak in front of a room full of parents to the board members, so I appreciate that. Yeah, so please stay engaged. And thank you for coming tonight.
So, I think I've heard from our discussion here that we can at least give direction to Jeff and team to create an interim agreement for our next meeting. Is there any?
A question. By next meeting, do you mean the 29th?
I do.
There's always Friday.
Okay, that's fine.
It shouldn't actually be that hard. We have a 46-page document that we can strip of the long-term pieces. It is actually quite easy.
Could I ask if we have a plan if BCS declines to engage with this new agreement?
Who is that question to?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, as I said, I think it makes sense for everybody to move forward with the first year or two. Obviously, it's better and less paperwork if we can just agree to that with BCS and not have to go through the last couple rounds of back and forth that are entailed by the formal Prop 39 process. because I think that's likely where we would end up anyway, although we have to have that further discussion. So, whether that's an agreement, since it is Thursday, I don't know if we can get a round trip to the BCS board to take their temperature in that time or not. So yeah, I'm not sure what the best
Well,
path
I'm not
forward
sure
is.
that given the feedback we've gotten, that's our concern of the moment. I think we need to see that agreement, the five of us
Yeah.
are comfortable with it.
Yep.
And then we can push it over the fence and get a reaction to it.
Yep.
This would be my approach.
Yep.
And then we can try to work it for post Monday night with them all, once we have a thing that we feel comfortable with. And then we'll get there, Paul. So we'll figure out where they're going.
Yep. We have to
That's-
actually worry about our part of the process.
Yeah, that's fine.
If anybody from the BCS board is listening and would like to attend on Monday and give us some feedback, that would be an appropriate venue for that too.
All right. I think that's it for tonight. Meeting adjourned.